Star Spring, Landmark, round end, heal damaged allies by 1. Then, once I've seen you heal 22 plus damage from allies, win the game. Holy shit. That is crazy. So it's going to be really hard to evaluate the power level of this card. It is an alternate win condition, right? It's an alternate win condition, and I think here, wait, let me minimize and then bring this up again. I love this kind of shit, I think. I think that it's really important for games to have alternate win conditions. I'm a big fan of like gameplay that feels diverse. This I don't know as much about. It feels like this is going to be a little bit, you're going to have to play around in a pretty specific way. So when we compare this to like Fiora or Ezreal, I think a lot of these are going to work pretty similarly, where sometimes at the end of the game, you're going to feel like, oh, I can't do anything, I've lost. And I think for the most part, it just comes down to like playing the entire game around this, because it has to see the healing, right? So if they play Star Spring, they have to play it on like turn 2, right? And what that means is you have the entire game to play around it. And then I think it's not going to be like insanely competitive because of that, would be my guess. I think that in terms of like the alternate win condition sort of meme, I would expect it to be somewhere around the power level of Maokai. That's a sort of educated guess. Spring Gifts. Fully heal and I have to get back to that last one because obviously there's a shit ton to talk about there. Spring Gifts. Fully heal an ally. 1 mana slow. Wow, yikes. So this looks pretty bad. This obviously doesn't work on your own Nexus. It will count a lot for the what's this called? This first one? You're gonna use it with this first one. God, what is the name of this? Spring something? Star Spring? So obviously, you know, fully healing an ally, you can do a lot with Star Spring. You're gonna want to use this with like Brokeback Protector. Brokeback Protector is the 2/7 that damages itself by 3 every turn. No gem, so it's not main deckable. Ooh, that's interesting. That's a really good point. I actually didn't notice that. So let's go ahead and see if this is generated by something. We've seen sometimes these have been like it's been missing a gem for no reason in the past, but let me look at the other cards. Spring Guardian. When I'm summoned, create a Spring Gifts in hand. Okay, so yes, it looks like Spring Gift is just from the next card, Spring Guardian. That's a good observation. So basically, it's a 3/3/3 that creates the Spring Gifts, which just allows you to heal something later. Wow. Okay, then it's a lot better. I thought this was something that you'd put in a main deck, but if it's just a token that you get off of playing a 3-mana 3/3, then it's great. So what you're gonna want to do here is you're gonna want to play Spring Guardian on turn 3. So here's the curve. It is, you know, on turn 1 you play Star Spring, or sorry, turn 1. On turn 2 you play Star Spring. On turn 3, you play Spring Guardian. And then on turn 4, you might play Brokeback Protector. Brokeback Protector, keep in mind, is the 4-mana 2/7 that damages itself by 3 every turn. And then once you wait 2 turns, it'll be a 2/1. And then you can heal it for 6. You can heal it to full for 6, right? That's pretty interesting, you know? I mean, you can basically start getting your chugging along with your alternate win con. Divergent paths. Draw a landmark or destroy a landmark. They're really doing it. Okay. So they are giving us a proper ability for like an alternate win con deck. They really are. I think I really like this. I suspect that the alternate win con won't be super strong. With these things, it's always really, really, really hard to say, right? It's broken. I mean, so first of all, I do think this is pretty strong. However, I actually don't think it really is keeping a lot of the landmark strategies down. Like, for example, the 5-mana and the 7-mana landmark will definitely get hurt by this card if we're seeing this in a competitive format. This could be pretty good. For the most part, what we're seeing with Divergent Paths is the ability to build around this all-in strategy, right? That's what Divergent Paths is saying. It's saying that you can build a Starspring deck and make sure that you're drawing Starspring by turn 3, because you can double float and then play Divergent Paths on 2 or 3 and then play Starspring on 3, right? You have enough mana for that. The one thing though is Divergent Paths does have the ability to keep certain things out of competitive viability, right? This card does have a bit of an oppressive nature, and that's kind of like what you guys are pointing out. The fact that, so here's what it means to be oppressive. What it means to be oppressive is to be a card that exists in a strategy that also happens to hard counter other strategies without being a tech card, right? And that's the difference between Hush and Purify, right? Because Hush is a card that's already strong enough to just be in decks, and it also hard counters strategies that exist, right? But oppressive just means I'm countering a strategy before that strategy even exists, right? I'm killing something before it gets born in another way, right? And Divergent Paths does have that property a little bit. It does have, for sure. Because if you're building around, you know, a deck that is trying to do a Starspring deck, and you queue into someone doing this like the Howling Abyss, you're kind of just stopping that from existing at all, right? Because I no longer have to even play for my win con. What I can do instead, wait, why is this loading? Hello? That was weird. What I can do instead is I can just wait until turn 7, and then when you try to play Howling Abyss, I can just straight up murder it, right? Which is, yeah, that can be pretty unhealthy potentially. The question is like how viable it actually is. So what is important to do design-wise is to have cards like this that are able to tutor some kind of, you know, the win condition, the build around strategy you have, which in this case is Starspring, right? You want the ability to tutor that while simultaneously having some kind of backup value, but in this case the backup value could end up like hurting a lot of other strategies. It's an interesting deck. With this kind of thing, you really have to see it in action, right? A lot of you guys are saying, oh, Starspring is OP. Like, this is the kind of card that is almost impossible to evaluate without seeing the other tools. We haven't even seen Soraka yet. We haven't even seen Soraka yet, right? We don't know how hard it is going to be to really get like 22 plus damage. Because again, the damage has to be dealt, right? Like, you can't, it doesn't count as a heal if you use it on a unit with full health. So this is going to be like kind of tricky to use. I can tell you the deck right now, and it's the same deck I said would happen 2 days ago with Tahm Kench and his followers. It's just going to be a Tahm Kench and Soraka deck, right? Like, straight up. Tahm Kench is perfect with Soraka, and Soraka is perfect with Tahm Kench. Soraka is going to need those followers that are damaged, and Tahm Kench is going to need healing, right? Now, it's possible that you would run Soraka without Tahm Kench, but just with Bilgewater and with those damaged followers. That would work too. And you can try to run this package with like some of the Noxus cards as well, for sure. It probably wouldn't be as good as the Bilgewater ones, but it seems like, I mean, in Runeterra card design, they do very intentionally set up archetypes to be like these two colors together, and it feels like this is for sure the Targon Bilgewater crossover, right? Period. With Starspring in particular, we can't say without actually seeing that deck in action and having playing with it and playing against it, we can't say how OP it might be. I'm actually not too concerned with Starspring. I think the developers are generally extremely careful with alternate win cons. The alternate win cons we've seen so far have been Fiora and Maokai, and I think Starspring is going to be around the power level of those alternate win cons. Now, Fiora is a stronger card because she's flexible. She's not just an alternate win con. She's also just, you know, a 3-mana 3/3 challenger, which is nice. But in terms of, like, building around the alternate win con, I don't expect Starspring to be super strong because you will have to play the entire game in an absolutely specific way. And there will still be counters to the strategy. We don't know how commonly landmark destruction will be, right? What I can say is you probably can't run Divergent Paths without running a landmark yourself, right? But man, yeah, honestly, the design of this card seems like it really limits a lot of things. I wonder about this because it feels like, again, it's hard to say without seeing how much landmark removal there is in other ways, but I feel like the divergent paths could lead to a meta where, like, okay, if you imagine everyone's running landmarks, anyone running a landmark deck, the thing about landmark decks is they mostly have to be built around, right? So when you see the landmarks we've seen so far, we've seen this landmark, which you have to build your entire deck around, right? We've seen the Shadow Isles landmark, which you also kind of have to build your entire deck around. Vaults of Helia. I think with a Vaults of Helia deck, if you were able to go into another color, like being able to tutor it out with that Divergent Paths card could be good. And then we've seen this one, the Howling Abyss, which you don't really have to build around as much. But a lot of the time you will be in Targon and you might just want to actually run Divergent Paths. And if a lot of people are running Divergent Paths, then it creates this weird rock, paper, scissors scenario where, like, if you're playing a landmark deck and they're playing a landmark deck and you just have Divergent Paths and they don't, you're going to get kind of screwed, right? And you can't just slot it into your deck because you're already running a landmark. It feels like it creates bad scenarios. The Bilgewater one. So, from my perspective, I think the Bilgewater one is going to be a pretty weak card. And I also think people are kind of overhyping Vaults of Helia. I don't expect it to be, like, long-term competitive. And I think that Divergent Paths is definitely going to keep cards like that down. Like, Vaults of Helia has a huge deck building cost. It's an insane deck building cost. If you play your only Vaults of Helia in your hand, and I kill it with Divergent Paths, I've basically just won the game, almost. Like, I'm not just a 2-mana up on that exchange. Not even close. You've also built your entire deck around this card, and it's just gotten popped like that, right? So that's a crazy, crazy counter. So what we see here with Divergent Paths is we see a card that, on one hand, kind of props up landmarks by allowing you to draw them and tutor them into your hand, and on the other, it allows you to hard counter landmarks, which I think a pattern like that can create a lot of, like, kind of like rock, paper, scissors scenarios, or like, did they draw the Divergent Paths, which I don't really like. I do like the rest of these cards. I am a big fan. I think I do really like Springstone, and I know that's gonna sound like, I'm sure a lot of people don't. Alternate win cons are always a hard territory to get into, right? Why does this just like randomly loading sometimes? I like alternate win cons. You have to be very careful with them. You have to be very, very, very careful with alternate win cons. And sometimes they can be very toxic, but those are hard to say from our perspective without actually seeing them and playing with them. So what I can say about Starspring is I'm not really pessimistic about this. I'm hopeful for this. This looks cool. I like the idea of an alternate win con, and until we, like, you know, there's a chance it'll be really unfun, and who knows, maybe it could even be OP. I don't think it'll be OP, but it could be, and we'll see. And that, you know, maybe they'll have to touch that up. I'm seeing a lot of you guys are concerned with that, but I'm really not too worried with this. I really am not. I'm looking forward to, like, having more alternate win cons in the game, and I do really like that I think this healing archetype is going to be really interesting. I think healing is going to be really cool. I'm excited for Soraka. That could be really neat. It's just Divergent Paths that is slightly concerning to me, but we'll have to see. Starspring only works on damaged allies. Healing Nexus won't count. Yeah, exactly. I think maybe a lot of people who are saying it's OP are thinking, like, it works on Nexus, which it shouldn't. Like, 22 plus damage is going to be really, really hard and really, really slow. And if you're playing against, like, an aggro deck, this is a strategy that will not work against aggro because it doesn't count Nexus health, right? We'll have to see. Regen counts. We don't know for sure if regen counts or not, I think. Do we have precedent? I'm not actually sure. We know. Regen counts. What's the precedent? What does regen interact with? Regen should work. It works with Star Shepherd. Regen works with Star Shepherd. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. No, that's a good precedent. So I guess regen should work with this. Okay, if that's true, then it could be pretty degenerate. I could see this being kind of gross. If regen works with this, then it's just like you're just always gonna run this with Braum, and it's always just gonna be like you play Braum, you play Bastion on Braum because you're in Targon. Braum Targon is already kind of toxic. If this works with regen, then it's just gonna be like a game of just I slam my Braum on turn 4, or I slam my buffed Braum with Written in the Stars on turn 5, and I just Bastion that Braum and just like keep him alive with all my I have all the fucking Teehee Targon spells and Freljord spells. I have, you know, Troll Chant, I have Brittle Steel, I have Elixir of Iron. My Braum's never dying. I have triple Bastion, and it's just Braum's gonna single-handedly win me the game eventually. That could be pretty disgusting. That could be pretty disgusting. I could see that. Papa Rumel could be really funny with this. At the end of the day, when I see a card that is really interesting, it's going to I'm going to be optimistic about it, right? When I like if it doesn't look like it's going to be super toxic, if it just has the ability to, like, I think Starspring will be cool. Oh, I hope it'll be cool. Yeah, I could see it leading to some disgusting strategies. We'll really have to see. I'm more worried about Divergent Paths because it feels like this. A card like this can take a lot of interesting strategies and keep them at bay, and I don't like that. But Starspring will be interesting, and I look forward to building around this. I think that if it does work with Braum, then suddenly, yeah, that's the deck with Starspring. If it works off of Braum's regen, suddenly what this is actually no longer a Starspring deck. It's just simply a Braum Targon deck that has a way to win the game, that has a way to end the game, right? Like, I literally, and this is the distinction I would make, I literally wouldn't call it a Starspring deck anymore if it works with Braum. It's just because Braum Targon is already a deck. Again, you run Bastion on Braum, you run, you know, Solari Priestess for Written in the Stars to pull out Braum. You have buffs for Braum. You have, like, permanent buffs. You will just never let your Braum die because you have all the spells, and of course you have Hush to stop like some units that might have the ability to kill Braum from killing Braum, like, I don't know, Lee Sin, random shit like that. And a deck like that is actually pretty powerful, but it's lacking one thing, which is this kind of win condition, because Braum is a great way to like stall out games and generate that value, but unlike Lee Sin, he can't just end the game on his own. So what we could see is kind of like a Braum deck. It would play pretty similarly to Lee Sin, by the way, where it's just like, it's a 4-mana challenger that eats something for free every turn, and you run a shit ton of spells to protect it. Except for, again, Braum can't kick the Nexus, so Starspring would kind of be your kick. Sounds pretty toxic. God damn it. I mean, it's literally kind of just like another Lee Sin deck. Like, it really is. Like, it would play basically like a second Lee Sin deck. Because it's literally, Braum is literally a Lee Sin that can't kick, and Starspring is the kick that Braum needs. Because it's just a 4-mana challenger that just kills something for free every turn, and your entire deck is spells to protect it. Okay, I kind of wish this didn't work with Braum. Anyway, that's my initial impression. That's my initial impression. These cards at the very least are a lot more interesting than the ones we've seen before, right? We'll hope it works out well. I think Starspring is super interesting. I like cards that are interesting. I like developers taking bold steps. This one in particular, yeah, I could see it leading to degenerate stuff. Well, we'll see, guys. We'll see. Let's not worry about things that, you know, we haven't even seen yet.